You are in for an interesting ride.
Note: Nigel is coping with disability in recent years, and a significant issue he has is the debilitating condition of COPD, an acute lung disease which causes respiratory problems. You might become aware of this during these interviews. Please bear this in mind, as Nigel does a great job of staying the course and sharing initially some background about his early life before telling us about an astonishing encounter and much, much more. Buckle up.
So welcome back, everybody. This is segment 2, and I am with Nigel Wright.
I am actually living in Morecambe in the northwest now.
Equally lovely area of the UK.
Amazing place. It's the largest natural bay in the UK. It's quite amazing, huh? I used to have a shipwreck yard on the beach. I used to actually break up ocean liners on the main beach. The railway line used to go right down to the jetty, pick up the metal, and I go to Morecambe Station, which is now an entertainment venue, and then on to Lancaster and down to the scrap places in York and that for smelting. Another place of vast history. I only got the Pendle Witches, and I've come face to spirit with those. Yeah, I when I came here first, I was yearning for the paranormal. The Winter Gardens Theatre here on the seafront, very haunted, and they do ghost hunts. So I volunteered as an unpaid escort. And one of these nights I was going underneath the main stage, and there's this big, very dark, cavernous space under the stage. And part of it's haunted. So we go there, 2 o'clock in the morning, turn the lights out. Our medium is to summon the spirit. Anyway, this night, right in there, there was a ladies' group for the hen night. And the medium called out the spirit and said, any spirit, let yourself known. Bang, the stone came right over and hit me on the side of the arm. I thought, boy, what's going on here? The spirit said, don't worry, whoever it is, they don't like you very much. So now I must be a chaplain sort of thing. And no, I'm getting a woman. And these things were being thrown all over the place. Women were screaming, their things were coming out the dark at us. And there was no one else in the building. And the medium said, I think we'd better leave. The women went back with another escort back to the front of the building where we had an office on, all lights on and coffee and that. Medium said, do you want to stay here for a minute, Nigel? This is getting interesting. He said, you're used to this. I said, yeah, as long as I don't get knocked unconscious, yeah. And he said, oh, now I know who it is after a few minutes. And this stone come whizzing by again. It just missed my nose by about an inch. And I said, well, whoever it is, could you tell her not to throw stones at me? I know she's there. I've got the message. He said, didn't know, sir. He said, there's 13 of them. And I went, oh, God. And I suddenly rang a bell. And I said, it's the Pendle Witches, isn't it? And he said, yeah, it's Elizabeth, the old lady. She said it's the boss herself. And I went, ah. He said she'd got the whole cover near. He said, I said, what are they doing in the Morecambe Garden Theatre? Oh, they often come here. They like this place. He said they liked having the women there. And we counted the women afterwards. There were 13 of them.
Well, let's go back to the UFO experience that your mum clearly saw. Interesting that she wouldn't speak to you about that.
There weren't many local groups in the Southwest then for that sort of thing. And I had to wait to the 90s and the 80s, still going up on a weekend with my granddad's World War II binoculars and my big mug of stewed tea, big vacuum flask, and the old Parkers that used to wear gloves, and trying to take a camera. And my camera was a Kodak Instamatic.
Nigel recounts his association with Arthur Shuttlewood, a journalist who was well known in Warminster, southwest England. The town became a hotspot, a cause célèbre in light of intense, ongoing incredible sightings and UFO experiences.
In conversation, a modest man, a very quiet man, not what you would call a typical journalist, although he was a very experienced journalist, very well known. He was really a nice guy. And funny enough, I was talking to his granddaughter on Facebook the other day, and I said to him, how nice a chap he was and how he encouraged me to take the subject up and ignore the Mickey takers. He's saying, dig all you can to find the truth. And I mentioned this to his granddaughter, and she said, oh, it's so nice to have someone talking so nice about Granddad. He's one of the 3 heroes of ufology that I have. But I wanted to go into journalism full time. And Sue, God bless her, she said, if you really want to do this, do it. So I jumped with both feet into being a freelance journalist. And the one person who gave me every ounce of encouragement was the late, great Graham Birdsall of UFO magazine fame, who was probably the best ambassador for British ufology ever. And when I met him at the UFO conference in Leeds, you must come and sit at the speaker's table. I'm not speaking. Don't worry about that. Introduced me to all these faces that I'd seen in magazines since the year dot. And he's talked to him as if I'm his oldest friend. And all of a sudden, I was yakking to people like Dr. Mack, John Mack.
Funnily enough, I met a lady called Veronica Keane, and he was staying with her at the time. And she said, yeah, we were waiting for him to come home, and it was already 11. And anyway, listen, let's get back to your UFO experience.
I think we are all brought into this subject for a reason. I think that we are preconditioned to being fascinated by the subject. Everybody I've ever known that's been serious into ufology cannot explain how they got into it unless they'd had an experience, or because there was just something nagging in their mind that said they had to know. When I found out the reason why my mother didn't want to speak to me about the sighting, I can now understand why. In 1997, I joined a strange phenomena group in Exeter called the Exeter Research Club. And principally, it was to do with cryptozoology. From the outfit, John Downs was running it. So I booked this lady who's a professional regressive hypnotist. She deals with missing time. And I said, oh, that's interesting. He said, yes, he said, I remember you telling me about how you can't remember what happened that night. You saw a UFO. And your mum wouldn't tell you? He goes, I wonder if there's some missing time in it. And I said, John, I'm starting to try and be a journalist, yes, but I'm not going to invent something just to get myself an article in a magazine. No, he said, no, there's nothing in it. There's nothing in it. He said, let me pay for the session. Now, I was really a hard-boiled skeptic when it came to hypnosis. So anyway, I went to her house in Exmouth. She said, it's very simple. I'm just going to put a little back of this nice soothing theme music. She said, just lie there, shut your eyes, and count from 5 backwards. 5, 4, and I'm twiddling my thumbs and thinking about what I'm going to have for tea, you know. All of a sudden, she goes, we wake up now. And what? And I only got to 3. And she said, well, that's a story and a half. Have you had a story to tell? And I looked at the clock, and I'd been gone for 40 minutes. I said, I've been hypnotized. Oh, yes, you certainly have. She said, would you like to hear the recording? I said, yes, please. She made me a cup of tea, and back it all came. She took me back, and my voice changed back to a 7-year-old. Really weird, in your own voice going back to being 7. And I was frightened, and my mother said this thing had gone. And then the door of the caravan had been opened, had been locked, and these 3 people came in. And my father went to say, who the devil are you? He couldn't move, and my mother couldn't move. And they were human-like, had blonde hair. They had blue boiler suit type things, one-piece suit. The woman had long hair. The 2 gentlemen, they had longish hair. A little badge. It looked somewhat like the Star Trek badge, but not. It had a planet with a star coming to it, an arrowhead. The one of the men was slightly older. And he said, don't worry, we're human. We're not here to hurt you. And we're now going to take you and have a talk with us on board our craft. And they take me as well. My mother was saying, don't take the boy. And no, he won't be hurt, but we need to speak to him. And I remember going, either walked or floated, I don't know how, this big ship. And I'd gone in, and there was loads of people, all dressed the same, all looked the same. And this older man talking to me, he's not talking, but he's talking to me, but I can't see his lips move. He was telling me that they came from the year 2035, they were a scientific research group. He said, look, your parents are just being interviewed. Have a look. And I could look through the screen, and there was bed-type couches. My parents were being laid there, one beside the other, and these people were just talking to them. He said, no, they're all right. They weren't being hurt. You won't be hurt. He said, we're after this. And all of a sudden, there's like this screen appeared from nowhere, midair, and it's double helix, a DNA. He said, we're looking for a genetic link between you and your parents and bowel cancer, which will be very important in my time. I can't tell you why. He said, we've done the test on you already. Couldn't remember that. He said, soon you'll wake up and it'll be morning. You'll be back in your bed. None of you will be hurt. I promise you this, and we'll be gone. He said, there, your parents have finished. You can now all go back. I'm back in bed. Yeah, go to sleep. That was it. Now, the weird thing about that is when I heard it, and I went, She goes, what's the matter? I said, look, I'm a ufologist, and I don't like false memory syndrome. This is why I don't like hypnosis. So I've heard about false memory syndrome. She goes, oh, God, not you as well. I can tell you this happened to you. This definitely happened to you. As she said, I've been a hypnotherapist 20 or 30 years professionally, and she said, I'm not on the stage. I do it as a medical service. She said, and I'm telling you, this is true. So I wrote it up presented it to the meeting the following month. I never got it published. I think it was a bit too far for them. 6 months later, I had to have a checkup in hospital. I had suffered from bowel cancer in 1991. Which is another reason why I didn't quite believe the story, because I was a bowel cancer patient. I had to have a 6-month checkup. I had a major, and my surgeon was there, surgeon who operated on me. He said, Mr. Wright, do you mind if this other doctor joins us this afternoon? He's doing some research into bowel cancer. I said, no. Doing research into DNA links, parental links with bowel cancer. Father died with bowel cancer. And we noticed in your notes, they said, well, do you mind if we take some blood, some DNA? I said, I'll probably you'll find this link. They said, how on earth do you know that? I said, I've heard this story already. When? And I told my doctor about it, and he was flabbergasted. He said, this chap's only just flown in yesterday from Australia. Nobody knew about it in the UK. I said, well, I did. This is a new avenue of exploration, and that would be 1970, about 6 years after the operation.
Nigel mentions a transcript of the long-lost recording that he has somewhere of the hypnosis session with an illustration he did of the badge, which the older man who was speaking to him said he should try and remember.
It's illustrations of the badge, as I recall it. And the chap actually said to me at the time, remember what this looks like, because you'll see it again. But what I like about it is it ties in with medical fact, post-hypnotic regression. So I cannot be accused of having had FMS memory of that, because it occurred post-hypnotic session itself.
I wanted to go over the memories Nigel spoke of to see if there was any further detail that might surface as we spoke of it.
Blue boots with silver lines around the top. That's what they were wearing.
But were they as tall as your parents, or were they a bit taller?
They seemed about average human height. Very handsome, beautiful. They looked a bit like Vikings, because you like Viking stories. And they know all Vikings look like the other bloke, a bit like me now, grey beard. And he was fine. And the way they talked was a bit weird. As I say, I can't remember seeing their lips move. Fastings I could see. There was a line going down, so I presume there was a fasting of some sort. There was nothing on the back. The backs were plain. It was blue. It was a darker shade of blue, royal blue. There was a darker blue boots, which came up to about mid-calf and tight with a, not metallic silver, but a silver line around the top of them, but they didn't seem to have any fastening. No jewelry, that I could tell. They had this feeling of overwhelming friendliness.
Lovely. Did they have any accoutrements with them? Did they have a belt, any patches? You said one had a patch.
It was more an orbital shape. This, and then this thing coming up at an angle through it. But I can't remember any specific detail on it. The colour was silver. All I do remember is this man who said that he was in charge. I can remember saying, remember this badge, because we will be back again, and you will know it's us by the badge.
That's interesting.
Whether I have been visited or not since, I do not know, but I have been getting strange marks all my life on my body which come up for no apparent reason.
Oh, have you?
I don't know. Look,
I want you to just tell me how they came into the caravan. Was there a knocking at the door, or was there any noise around the caravan?
No, I can't remember any noise. I can't remember any lights or hammering on the door. The door just opened. Now, I can know my mum and dad always double lock that door at night, always. But they opened the door, Hannah went down, they just came in. They appeared to walk in. I remember feeling the floor moving like they were walking. So wherever they weren't floating, they were actually walking. The woman smiled, the men sort of pleasantly, not over smiling, but the woman was. She seemed natural complexion. She wasn't.
Were they fair skinned?
Fair skinned, not overly white. They just trying to reassure the three of us, I think. They seemed a bit more concerned with my parents, obviously, than with me. But the chappie, when he turned and told me that they weren't going to hurt me, I wasn't going to hurt my mum and dad. Look, your mum and dad are fine now. My mum and dad calmed down.
Did they, were your mum and dad, were they conscious when these people came in?
Yeah. The only thing was, we had mantle gas lamps in the van. That's all we had. We had no mains lights or anything. But when they walked in, it was light in that van. And I don't know why. I don't know how they did that. Couldn't see any visible lights.
Were the gas lamps lit?
No. So thinking about it as an adult again, looking back 50 years, they must have had some form of lighting.
What sort of time in the day did this happen?
It was the early hours of the morning. I remember that. My father actually said, well, it's nearly 2 in the morning. So it would have been about 2 in the morning. That's before when they were still discussing it, what they'd seen. My mother seemed oddly calm. Mum was very excitable sometimes. That's putting it mildly. But she was calm. Considering her child was in potential danger, Dad had his dressing gown put on. Mum put hers on. I was just in pajamas. I didn't feel cold. And we're going outside. I felt the cold air, so I know I was outside. Slippers on and walked across, and the craft was there. Whether it was hovering or whether it was on some sort of undercarriage, I don't know, because it was dark. I couldn't see. The door was open, and it was opened upwards, inwards, thin steps. It looked like they'd fallen one from the other. That's the procession ended a bit short. And I had to clamber up, I know, to get to the first one. I remember doing that. And then we were all inside, and there was this huge, great room. It's like split in half. And half was where I was taken to with the old boy. The other half had these two couches. Mum and Dad were laid down in their own position. They weren't pushed down. They weren't controlled, but they weren't physically manhandled at all. Showed you is what I can remember. Mum and Dad would have been in bed with no dressing gown, but I remember Mum and Dad putting their dressing gowns on.
Right, okay.
So
interesting.
that must have been post-sighting.
And I'm talking to Nigel Wright, and we're talking about his incredible event that happened when he was a youngster in 65 with his parents when they were out caravanning. And we're just drilling down into some of the detail of the things that happened and his experience whilst on the ship and what was said to him. So Nigel, please do regale us with the next segment, which is you're on the ship.
Right, I'm on the ship. Right. And as I was explaining to you before, there was an older gentleman talking to me in one half of this wide space. I don't know whether it was a room or a deck or whatever. It was just a wide space to me as a youngster. A funny sort of metallic deck. I can't say it was metal. It wasn't silver. Well, it was silverish in color. Walls, same. The windows were portholes, like you'd see in a ship. And there were four or five in the wall behind where my parents were. Behind this sort of shimmery screen was like a curtain or a screen or something. Was two couches, no bedding or anything like that, just sort of a straight L-shaped couch, slightly angled heads, head bits. And my father was on the furthest, my mother was on the nearest. I remember that. They weren't undressed; they were fully dressed. They were talking, quite happily talking to the woman and the gentleman that had come into the caravan with the older man. But they all seemed to be having a jolly good time. This gentleman said to me that not to worry, we weren't going to hurt you. Now, when he looked at me, I could tell he was not moving his lips, but that didn't frighten me. For some reason, I felt that was perfectly normal. And I could hear the voice, and the voice didn't have an accent at all. It was perfect English. Thinking back now after 50 odd years, 60 odd years nearly, it was too perfect in English. Perfectly enunciated. There was no accent whatsoever. It was crystal clear Oxford English.
Could you give him an age?
And he looked about my age, about 60. The other younger man and woman, late 20s, early 20s, mid 20s to early 30s at the most. This older gentleman, though he wasn't out of condition, he had no fat on him. And he said, "We're a medical team. We're doing medical research. We're scientists. We come from Earth like you. I live in a place not far from here, but in my time." I said, "Fine." And anyway, he said, "We've been looking at genetics." I didn't know what the word meant, obviously, at that time, but I remember the word because I recounted it under hypnosis. And it's a link between your father and you, and it goes back through the family. And it's to do with bowel cancer. He's specific. He said bowel cancer. Now, you can argue, and quite logically argue, I would, as a journalist, that that was false memory syndrome, that was implanted in my head because of what I've been through. But I seem to remember his voice specifically saying that. And this is what makes us think this. And this screen sort of appeared from nowhere in thin air. Huge thing. Well, to me, it's a huge color. And it had this sort of three-dimensional, what we would call computer graphics, moving, a double helix. I didn't know what it was. It just looked like a fancy spiral to me then, with a lot of blobs on it. But I now know what it is for the benefit of hindsight. It was a DNA spiral, double helix. And he was trying to explain to me, but I couldn't really make sense of the words, what it was they were specifically looking for. He did. And I can't recall, and I couldn't recall under hypnosis the exact words he was on about, because I'd never heard them and I didn't know what it meant. But he said, it won't hurt you what we do. We've done you. When we're saying that, we've done you, we've examined you, and we're just going to have a chat with your parents, and then you can go. To begin with, I wasn't really terrified. I was more quizzical than terrified. I think in the end, a sort of boyhood fascination, again, as I've told you previously, I was always into mechanical things. As a dad was an engineer, I was always interested in it. And I think I was more fascinated by the craft and the technology. Well, I call it the bits. In those days, the bits that were whirring around and making noises and that. I, honest to God, was not scared. And this chappie patted me on the shoulder. Come on then, let's take you back to your van. Not van, back to your unit. I always found that funny. Silver wall, silver floor, windows, porthole windows, dark glass. There was a doorway of sorts on the end wall. That's where we came. That was. You can go to that one. We went on one just slightly to the right of it, because I remember walking across to the right to go out. So, no, I didn't see any there was some flashing lights to one side, but nothing, no great panels or control levers, or there was nothing I could sort of say, oh yes, and there was this big electromagnet sticking in the middle. I didn't see any magnets or mechanical devices. And the only electric bits I saw was the shimmering sort of division in the screen. That was all I saw. And the floor, obviously. And then the circlograph itself, doors that opened inwards, always inwards. When the door we went out, we had to stand back as it came up and in from the top, padded down these stairs again, and across a matter of 100 yards or less from our van. Went back, the door opened on its own, which I found rather amusing for some reason. We walked up in. I think they must have shut it because I saw the handle go down, and they'd gone. And the light went out, and the next thing I know, it's morning. I couldn't remember anything even under hypnosis. And that was it. That was the whole thing. And the lady's reaction, hypnotized, was, well, that was quite some experience. She said, it's not the first time I've heard this sort of thing. I said, I'm sure it's not. Do you believe it? I said, well, I believe I said it because I've heard it. But do I believe it? Believe it? I'm not sure.
Did you
I
notice
wasn't sure.
any marks or anything like that on your body after that event?
Nope. No, the only thing is that, as I say, this overwhelming fascination with UFOs that grew and grew and grew and grew, even though I hadn't been told anything about it at that time. I had no recollection at that time from a young man until 1997. So you can't say, oh, it was a mental excitement of that. No, but I just had to find out about UFOs. I dropped everything else for a moment. Everything in my mind had to do with UFOs and electromagnetic drives. I was designing electromagnetic drives when I was 10. I just had this overwhelming urge, and I found out that the Nazis had experimented with flying saucers. So I had to find out all about that because I loved history as well. You know, it's been a lifelong love.
Yeah. You said your father, I mean, your parents didn't mention anything for 40 years or so, but
No.
your father being such an open man,
Yeah, I know. It makes me wonder, because we got to understand, he was a very private man. Although he was a photojournalist, in himself, he kept things very quiet. He, if I tell you a story, this is the honest to God truth. I'm sure thousands of other families in the world have got the same sort of story. I know they have. My father told me that during the war, he was war age, he was conscription age, that he could not do it because he was an agricultural engineer then, and two, he had bad hay fever. When he went for his medical, he was suffering, and he used to suffer terrible hay fever, and his eyes were all running in his nose. It was a terrible state. And he said they turned him down because he said he was in a valuable job for the war effort, and they turned him down. And that was it. So we never turned. And after he died, I got a phone call one day when I became a journalist. I made some friends, obviously, in journalism, and I got a phone call from London. I know it was from a phone box. And this lady, whose name I will not recite, because she's a very good friend, she said, I've just got a summer job. She said, I've got the sack. I said, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm not. She said, I'm working in the MOD. I said, what are you doing in the MOD? She goes, oh, I'm doing library work. It's great fun. She says, I'm not getting paid much for this money. Keeps me going in London.
The Extraordinary Secret Life of Cecil Wright, World War II spy, and his wife's 4-year stay for her own safety in a mental institution where she was a nurse whilst he was undercover in Germany.
Your dad. I said, what about it? She goes, I'll come across his name. Well, you come across my name. I said, well, what's my dad's name doing in the MOD? Don't be daft. I said, he wasn't in any forces. Well, yes, he was. And it turned out Dad had been in the OSC, Operation Special Executive in World War II, and spent most of his time in wartime Germany, being undercover working in the German bomb factory. And I never knew this. And when my mother died, she said she was going to let me know. I knew a bit. I found out a bit. I can't recite it because it all comes under the OSC. My children will find out because the 100-year rule is coming into expiration in a few years. They'll all find out about Granddad's thing when it all becomes public. And I found out that my mother had spent a lot of the wartime in a local mental institute, what they termed immoral behaviour, which is rather odd, considering she was a nurse receptionist for a doctor living there. But I then found out, doing my own digging, that people who had relatives working abroad in the OSC and etc. like that, but sometimes, especially if they were married or spouses, they would be placed into a mental institute for their own safety. So it would be under lock and key and they couldn't be got at.
Well, I'm actually astonished to hear that. Wow.
And well, you know that, don't you, Sue, for a fact, because we come across it when we were doing the family research, that my mother had spent 4 years in Langham, which is a local mental institute. And she used to tell me stories about that. And I thought she'd got it from being a doctor's nurse receptionist and gone in there to see patients.
So it was for her own protection?
Our own protection, yeah.
Wow.
His dad was in Germany.
As a spy?
Apparently, yeah. Yeah, he was working as an engineer in a bomb factory. You see, he was a very private man. He spoke 5 languages, apparently. When we lived abroad for a couple of years, he made out he spoke nothing. I don't speak French or anything. Oh, God, no. No, don't speak a word. And apparently he was fluent in quite a few. So you see, that's the sort of man he was. Very complicated man.
Wow.
Very complicated.
That's absolutely astonishing. And so, look, 1997, that was a pretty monumental year, but I believe it was not only for your regression and finding that memory, but in other ways too.
Yeah, I got married to my wife in May 1997. As I'm being reminded, May the 24th is our wedding anniversary. It's our silver one this year. My God, I forgot that earlier on. Nearly got crucified for that one. Then Sue got pregnant, and after I'd had bowel cancer in 1991, the cancer had spread to my appendix and lower, my lymph nodes, and to obviously various other parts of my body, which for sake of decency we won't mention. And I was told by the doctor that the chances of me being a parent were virtually 0. So I said, well, I'm living. So he said, yeah, we've got a 20% chance of living 5 years.
Oh,
and Sue
really?
married me knowing that. Sue's 4'11" and I'm 6'1". So we're the long and the short of it.
Hello, Sue. Welcome to the ET newsroom. And so yeah, what a shock, eh? To hear that and to know that for you, how amazing that you were able to just go ahead and stand by this great guy. And then
we had known each other before.
Oh, yeah.
And we split up. I went my way and became the most independent person ever. And then he come along and we just clicked as if we've been together all our lives.
We've been boyfriend and girlfriend from the age of 20 and 21, respectively. So
it was like as if we had lived together all our lives. Yeah. There was no awkwardness, nothing.
I'm a firm believer in reincarnation. I absolutely 100% believe in that. And I also believe in soulmates. And I'm sure that Sue and I have more than likely been partners, if not married, in previous lives.
Oh, I
Because
think no doubt. I think no
I
doubt.
don't know, you can either fit in as if you were made for each other. You see,
So
I
look,
think
let's
for
just
you-
pick up on the 1997 bit, which is really why I thought it would be nice to see Sue here. And what occurred that proved the doctors wrong?
We had one daughter and we were happy. Before I knew it, my best friend, because she is, my daughter was born in November. I knew both my girls are born in November, which is odd.
There's another thing for my family. All the family on my side are born on the 25th of the month, with the exception of my father. My stepsister is 25th of June. October rather is mine. And December, Christmas Day, is my mother. We were all born on the 25th of the month.
And both our girls were due on
due
the
on
25th.
First
As
of the
well.
month. Yeah, it's
Wow,
really,
that is really amazing. So you have a miracle child.
yeah.
She's our rainbow baby.
Tell Joanne what I did to you, poor dear, when you were 7 months pregnant.
Yeah, she took me to Stonehenge for a day out.
You must walk around anti-clockwise around Stonehenge, and we'll make the child psychic. And
And would you believe she sees people, doesn't
she
she?
sees buildings,
Buildings and things.
not people so much as buildings. She will walk into a room she's never been in, and she says it's like peeling back an onion. She sees the house through its entire history, decor after decor after decor, and it's altering the entire time. She's not sensitive to ghosts, but she is sensitive to buildings, which is an unusual gift.
And Sue, I understand it's entirely different for you. You're sensitive to seeing people a lot.
Yes, I see with quite a lot of people. I
Oh,
started as a child because my childhood was very, I can say, different. It was more lonely. I was up in my bedroom at 4 o'clock and that was it. I wasn't allowed downstairs.
Your dad was in the forces.
My dad was in the forces. We had to do what he said. First, I thought, I'm imagining these people. But no, and I used to talk to them and they never hurt me. So I really did enjoy it. And I never said anything to anyone because my parents did not believe in anything like this. So I kept it to myself for ages and ages until this one came along. Not being funny, he used to sort of take me to places because I am not into history. I don't want to know about anything about a place I go to. And we used to go there and I used to say to him, there's a vicar over there. Oh, look, there's so-and-so there. And I used to hold conversations. And the other week we were online with some friends who went to some woods or something. And I literally was saying,
Cannock Chase.
yeah, I was saying to them, you shouldn't be there. It's so dangerous for you two to be there tonight. One of the lady was a medium and she was going, she's saying exactly what I'm thinking and saying. I knew it was dangerous there. And yes, it did turn out dangerous for them. They had to pack up, didn't they? They couldn't handle it.
It's quite fascinating from an observer's point of view. I was actually seeing a mediumistic connection via Zoom, which was quite fascinating, a couple of 100 miles or so.
She's going, it was horrible. We felt really bad there. So they would not go into the woods. They stayed on the edge
Well,
of
a
it.
particular person runs a group. She is very knowledgeable about Cannock Chase area, but she had never heard the story of this place until she went there, and the stories are proven right by the mediumistic feelings of two mediums concerned. I class Sue as a medium, she wouldn't, but I said that Sue is clairaudient and clairvoyant. She hears and sees. As far as I'm concerned, that is natural medium ability.
Like I say, my brother died. There's a seat out in our garden. He used to have his cup of tea in the morning, and I used to go out there and we used to natter. And I was out there, and no joking, I could hear him. I could not get to see him, but all I could hear was his voice, because he always called me Susan, because he knows that annoys me. Because that is one of the words my dad used to call me if I was in trouble. My full name. So I've heard him a couple of times. I've sat there, but I would just love to be able to see him, to see that he's okay.
I think sometimes, don't you find that if a medium really desires to see a loved one, they never will. I was talking about this with the late Derek Acora. It was a good friend of mine, and Derek and I were talking about how mediums can't always see who they want to see the most. And he has the same experience.
I'd love you to just share with everybody about the chap you saw standing over Nigel with a sword.
Well, should we put the background very
Yeah.
quickly? Our home in 1997 was our 3-bedroom semi-council house that we bought. We had a lot of poltergeist activity, getting worse as we adapted the house. And we started knocking walls and that around, and it got really bad activity. We were having wardrobes and chest of drawers thrown across the room up above our heads when there was no one in the room. The children were seeing odd children and characters. Sue saw people. So we were in the middle of a very bad activity phase. And Sue will tell you what actually happened
Yeah.
that morning.
I was sort of half asleep, woke up, and I just saw this bloke, really big bloke, looking over my husband and saying he was going to kill him because I was his wife. And what was I doing in bed with this bloke? And I sort of said, no, this is my husband. And he was saying, don't you argue with me. I'm not having this. Was it a sword? I can't remember. A sword, I think he had. He was about to chop Nigel's head off. And I woke him, pushed him out the way, and poor Nigel ended up on the floor. And he said to me, what's going on? And I sort of mentioned it. Of course, this chap had gone. And I also saw a doctor in the house. And I didn't say anything for a while because I thought, oh, I'm just imagining it. But there was this doctor who used to come and ask me where the nurse was because it was his girlfriend and he wanted to be back with her. I said, well, I don't know, can't help you.
Eventually it got to the stage where I thought the children were getting upset and they were very young at the time. I thought this was going to stop.
One other thing, this bloke did come back once. I was in the bedroom with our grandson, who was only about 3 months old. Nigel was downstairs and I turned round and he looked at me, burst out with the most horrible laugh, and threw this great big old-fashioned dressing table at me with a mirror. It was one of my mum's really old one, and it is heavy. There was no way I could have done it. And Nigel come running up the stairs.
Yes, I heard a mighty great crash.
And of course, I had the baby in my arms, and I moved straight to the other corner of the bed. I've had that happen.
What did this guy look like, Sue?
Very tall, very big, black, straight, greasy hair, if you know what I mean.
Was he wearing a uniform or anything?
He had a black cape on. The cape reminded me of Dracula, you know what I mean? Big cape, black cape on, and a white fluffy shirt on. He wasn't a pleasant gentleman.
You didn't find out who he was?
No.
Well, we found out the story of the house. I got to the stage where I was getting fed up and I said to Sue, we're going to have to do something because the kids are getting affected now. So I went down to the local spiritualist church and I said, have any of your chaps and lasses got experience in a cleansing? Our house needs cleansing. And I told him what was going on. He said, well, I'll do it. Done it for several years. And there's another gentleman and a lady who have done it as well. And they're pretty good. What if all three of us come around and perform a cleansing ceremony for you? Service.
We were allowed to join in.
Yeah, you can join in if you want.
I just didn't feel I
Yes, you did.
I went upstairs with the baby.
Yeah, and I stayed downstairs in the front room.
The sad thing is, I started to cry. I was crying, and I came running down the stairs and shouted to Nigel, and he come out. I said, don't let them do it, please. There's something not right. Don't do it. Then all of a sudden, you went back in.
Well, we had
and the lady said, I've just seen the doctor go in. And I went, oh, he's happy now.
The lady. It turned out that our back garden, through research, we thought it was green grass area up to 1939 when the estate was built in the early 50s. So straight after the war, this place is 39, but in the 50s, a massive program of council estate building in the southwest. And this was one of them. But it wasn't a green field. It had been the site of a tented Napoleonic prisoner of war camp. And our back garden, which was 50 foot long, was the site of what had been the tented trauma ward. So it's highly surprising that in that corner where the entrance would have been to this ward was the portal where these poor souls were trying to get to, and for some reason could not get through to the light. And the medium said that they got about 7 or 8 spirits from our house. They pushed them through the light. And from the moment they did that, the house was fine. The air had lifted. Never had anything happen again. Apparently these people were laughing and happy when they went through. So they find each other.
So I'm back with a delightful Nigel Wright. Sue's just gone off to do some cooking, the crazy lady. She says she's going to be up till 3 a.m. To that event in 1965 when you had this incredible encounter with the Nordics. And can you just go over the year again? And was there any significance about that? I mean,
The leader just emphasized the dates 2035 to 2040. Why? I haven't got the foggiest idea. It was not mentioned to me. I knew that dates, plural, were important to him, and it was important to the mission that they were on. It was a definite scientific medical research mission. It was specifically aimed at people like my father, myself, and my mother.
did they say where they were from?
This planet, yeah, most definitely. There was not a hint at all of them being ET. I suppose, looking back, you could say they were interdimensional travelers because they travel in time.
Did they actually say to you, we've come back in time?
The only thing they said was, remember this badge because you'll know it's us, because we will come back again and again. We will visit you as in the future. We will see you through your life. To my conscious knowledge, they have not. I have woke up with the odd weird mark or two.
It's really not far
Fine.
away at all. But did
No.
they say that they were doing this because there was a problem with the genome?
Yeah, I don't know if problem. There was something which would affect them in their time. But whether it was going to be accelerated by outside influences or whether it was just going to naturally evolve into something far more serious, I don't know, Joan. I couldn't say. Woodbury Common, which is a common near Exmouth. That was my big cat sighting. The crazy thing was, again, you see, synchronicity. I'd been at the Centre for Protein Zoology headquarters at John's House in Exeter, which is about 13 miles from where I live in Exmouth. And the shortcut is to come back over Woodbury Common at night because the traffic's quiet, and go down the back road into Exmouth and home, which is a shortcut from where I used to live. So I got nearly to the point of getting into Exmouth. I've been over the Common, nothing abnormal happened. I was driving a 7-seater Seat, big Seat, tall Seat Alhambra. And headlights were fine. It was a lovely clear night, no fog, no mist, nothing. And I come down and there's this single lane. I've had UFO sightings galore, some which accidentally come to me when I've been out just having a cigarette outside. And I had the best FT flying triangle sighting of my life. And I was just having a quiet cigarette.
Can you tell us some of the locations you've seen those?
Coming into Exmouth, past a wood on the left and fields on the right. It's a horse farm, typical Devon hedgerows, tall and no traffic. And I'm coming down through. I'm not really particularly speeding. All of a sudden, I see something in the middle of the road. So I put my headlights onto full beam. There's no oncoming traffic. I think what looks like a black sack of builder's rubble in the middle of the road. Now, fly tipping is known there. So I'm thinking, oh God, it's builder's rubble. I better slow down. So I slow down to stop. So with that, this bag of rubble turned around and stared at me, and it's a big cat. And I mean, it is a big cat. It's a full size. Well, I later found out from my zoologist what it's called. It's called a melanistic leopard, because I accidentally called it a black panther, and he rapidly corrected me on that. When it stood up, which it did, it snarled at me first, and these big orangey reflective eyes staring at me. And being the seasoned investigative journalist that I am, I immediately set the central locking on, sat there and absolutely shaked like a tree. I had a loaded camera. I couldn't even go to the glove box to get it out. New batteries and all on it. I could have snapped the photograph of the Sentry. This thing was sat 20 feet in front of my car in full beam, and a big car. So I was high up. I had a lovely view of this thing. And this beautiful creature turned at me, and it stood up 3 foot at the shoulder. Must have been 4 foot long, with a long, curly, thin tail that curled up at the end, about the same length as its body. Massive paws, slowly strayed across to the left side of the road. And then you know how when cats leap, they leap with a very slow motion effect, almost as if no effort at all. That's what he did. And he bounded over this 8 foot high fence or hedgerow type fence, and it just cleared it completely and gone into the woods there. And I sat there and I shook.
Can you tell us what woods they are?
Well, just Woodbury Common They're private land still, which is really amazing. They're a site of special scientific interest because on Woodbury Common, you have tumuli, you have a perfectly preserved Iron Age fort that the road runs through, you have black cat sightings, you have UFOs, you have ghosts, you have witchcraft. Not much of it has been archaeologically examined, but when they did back in the 1930s, it was an amateur ex-Indian army colonel who did it as a hobby, and he got permission from the landowner to open up one of the tumuli. When he did it, found it was perfectly inside, but it was empty. The burial chamber had never been used, but down on the chamber floor was a perfect spiral. Not very common in England. They are known, but they're not very common. And they've opened up 2 or 3 more, and they've still got the same thing, not used, but with this spiral. You can see it on standing stones in Brittany and France. They've got the same sort of spiral. I've got a black pussycat. I call it my toy melanistic leopard. I phoned up the zoologist at headquarters, Richard, who's a qualified zoologist, and I described it to him. And he told me, "You've seen a melanistic leopard." And then John turned around and said, "Congratulations, dear boy. You've seen your first 14 animal. Wonderful." I've seen about 3 since then. I've seen a big 8 on Cannock Chase near Birmingham. And it's also known as a sighting for big cats and a Bigfoot type creature, cavemen type humans, with black-eyed children, UFOs, allegedly crashed into a TV transmitter at the tower years and years ago. I mean, it is well known as being an ancient place of high strangeness, and I can thoroughly recommend it. If anyone's interested in paranormal, go and visit Cannock Chase.
I tell you what, I'd love you to mention, and I know Sue has left the room, talking about the woman in white who served similar function to the men in black.
You're going to love this one. This was just post dates 1997. We'll go to 1998 because my daughter, when this happened, was about 3 months old. And in those days, we had a little small upstairs flat. It had a balcony overlooking the long straight road outside, a little single lane road. Anyway, I was out. I was at a meeting. So when I came back, I found my wife sat down, cuddling Beth and looking really quite shaken up. I said, "What's the matter?" And she said, "Your bleep nonsense you get involved in. Who have you been talking to? What have you been saying?" I said, "Why?" And she said, "About a real funny woman at the door." I said, "What?" She said, "There was a knock at the door." She said, "I looked at our balcony, overlooked the door, so she could see who was there." And she said, "There was this woman, and she had all white." And this is in summer. Well, it's spring going into summer. Beautiful sunny day. White mac, full length, white boots, white jeans, white headscarf, and big dark sunglasses. See, I've got the paper. I'm carrying him down. Over the door, and this woman, real pasty looking, heavily made up, gloves, white gloves. She said, "Is your husband Nigel Wright?" "Maybe. Who wants to know?" "Tell him, stop looking, investigating UFOs, and stop telling what he says about them, because otherwise there'll be trouble for you in the bag." Now, my wife, speaking words, shut the door quick. And then she quickly ran upstairs, put the baby into the playpen. She's going to see this woman. She was going to give her a piece of her mind. This woman was nowhere in sight, about 30 seconds, and literally ran out to the gate, which was only about 20 feet away. Up and down this road, there was a sign of a car. It's perfectly straight. You can see a woman. If she'd been walking for 2 minutes, you'd have seen her in either direction. Nothing. Gone. Vanished. Quizzed the neighbours who were in at the time. They didn't see anyone. They didn't hear anything. They didn't even hear this woman talking.
So was it a threat? She said
It was a threat. Yeah, it was a direct threat. And I said, "Well, what do I do?" And Sue said, "Well, I'm not letting any stupid woman threaten anything." So, she said, "You want to carry on, carry on."
Oh, what a great woman. Gee, fantastic.
She is a brick in more ways than I can go into.
Oh, yeah, fantastic.
And I said, "Right." So I went down and I was writing a column for the Express Journal, the local paper. And I wrote, "Who was this woman in white?"
Yeah.
And I looked up the case. And I said, "If you're reading this, be assured that I will not give up. I will pursue you. I will find out who you are, what you are, why you're coming to Earth or coming to this dimension, why you wanted to insult and threaten my wife and my child. And when I find out, I will expose you to the public for what you are. I won't hurt you, not physically, but I will expose you publicly. I will ruin your secret." And I made a direct threat to this person because I felt that my wife and child had been threatened, and I was in a vindictive journalistic mood. Nothing ever happened since. And that is I've retold that story to one person, and that's Nick Redfern, the author, who's a very good mate of mine, a long time, over 20 years, a friend of mine. And Nick was writing a book about Men in Black. So he said, I know you've had a woman in white to your room. They are known, but they're not very, again, not very common occurrence. So poor old Nick, he said, can I write it up? If you do what you want, I said, then Pratt, anyone gives it more publicity, the better. I owe her one.
So this woman then, so did Sue get any other information? Did she notice an accent? Did she was there anything else?
Nondescript. Again, perfect English. Too perfect English. As if it's slow, the actuation and the punctuation is precise, because they are thinking about, like I would speak to you here, they are thinking about what they have to say. And you know what I mean when you get somebody who is by nature born abroad but tries to speak English Oxbridge style, and they will punctuate and
so she
separate
said
every word.
that so can you just say again what she said, Nigel? Just get it in my mind.
Are you the wife of Nigel Wright, the man who writes about UFOs and digs in or researches the subject? And my wife said, might be, being cagey about it. Why? Who are you? Just tell him not to say any more about UFOs. Do not research them. Do not go any more digging into them. Otherwise, there could be trouble for you and the baby. It was a direct threat.
What was Sue's feeling? Did she feel that was a human being?
Scared for her child to begin with, obviously. But once the child was put away, Sue was basically full-blooded up.
Well, also, she was threatening you, of course, her husband.
I was just more annoyed, especially my child.
Yeah.
And my wife. I mean, the two most important people in your life threatened like that directly.
Were there any more incidents like that?
Never. Actually, I had one very strange incident, and I have to wonder if this gentleman involved was linked in some way. I can't prove it. We had a gentleman who had been a South African professor of engineering, and I didn't know this until brought up a large book of my designs for electromagnetic propulsion.
Nigel spent much of his 2 years in bed recovering from cancer creating illustrations of his design ideas for an electromagnetic propulsion craft with no moving parts. He showed them to a visiting South African professor of engineering whose parting words were not to show them to anyone after poo-pooing them.
I was showing, and you know, I was an engineering professor. I said, "Oh, would you like to see? I'd like your opinion on it. Is it feasible, or is this pure science fiction?" And he looked at it. He didn't say anything. And then he looked at me and said, "Where did you get this from?" I said, "Well, from up here, from my imagination." I said, "A certain amount of knowledge about electromechanics, but most of it from up here." "You couldn't have." I said, "Well, I have." "You've copied it." I said, "Most certainly have not." Strange. "Oh, well, I'm sure it's nothing." I left it. Now, that was about a week before I had this visit to the lady in white, and I'm linking the two together thinking, I wonder if the information was relayed back to whoever was in charge of these people, because I think they are linked. Men in black and women in white. That seems too...
Well, with the
too
threat
obvious.
element as well, and that being such a common meme and experience. Who was the person who was looking them over?
Retired college professor from South Africa who had lectured in engineering.
What would your designs produce? What
I'm going to call it a flying disc, a flying craft with no moving parts, none. It rotated, but it rotated to virtual reality rather than reality. Craft plates, electromagnetic plates would not actually rotate, but would appear to rotate. But you think about a fairground, great wheel on a fairground, when it's still, you get the lights at night, it's still moving. You know, you think of the current doing that around the plates of a craft, and in the middle there's a giant magnetic pole. So that's the center, and the plates are rotating plates of electromagnetic plates, which are rotating the current into a vortex. So the vortex is direct to the center pole of gravity. I don't know.
Really interesting to see those drawings at some point, and maybe get somebody else to look at them.
I've got them. I've got the whole load. I've kept that. And for some reason, again, Matt was started because as I explained to you, I had cancer in 91. And for 2 years, I couldn't move out of bed. I had over 1,000 stitches at the front. I had to learn to walk again. I had 2,500 stitches inside, 1,000 odd stitches outside. I was a resection. So I'll give you some idea how serious the cancer was. Very lucky to be here, but it left me incredibly bored because once the pain started to subside a bit from the operation, I was left with an active mind, an inactive body, and I had time to think. And I'll put all my ideas down on paper at last. And spending time with a ruler and a pencil. I didn't have a drawing board. I had a ruler and a pen and a pencil. And I ended up with a photo of that there. I love talking like this because I'm talking to a kindred spirit. So
Yes,
that's quite nice,
indeed.
actually. But I enjoyed my lecturing, although I've done amazingly well tonight. I can't really know.
I think you've done amazingly well.
Thank you. And it means a lot after 6 years of having this wretched thing. My own fault, I was a smoker.
Interesting to have opened up the area in the UK, sort of down in Devon. I know about Wiltshire and I didn't know so much about Devon. So thank you very much for introducing me to all of that.
27, there's over 100 sightings of various UFOs and ghosts and lit up animals and all sorts of fun and games you'll find in the book, all within that contained area between May and September. A certain day in September came, it was like the end of Battle of Britain. Really working flat out trying to come. My phone was going off at 3 in the morning with old ladies telling me that they were seeing UFOs in the garden.
Nigel's research will be seen in a sequel to the first book, The Rising of the Moon, called The Setting of the Sun, to be followed by his autobiography, Chasing the Shadows, a life spent searching for the paranormal. Nigel relates how the healing experience he had kick-started the healing of his extreme surgery, which wasn't doing so well at the time.
Running his hand about 6 inches away from where the scar was. And the scar started burning, sensation, itchy burning. Now I'm thinking to myself, that could be mind. I said, oh, stop it now, your mind's playing tricks on you. And it was really burning. And I said, can I ask you to stop? Because for some reason it's really irritating you. I said, it's supposed to be. He said, I know exactly what's wrong. You're not healing right, are you? He said, it's not knitting them together right. I said, you've had a really bad op there. Well, not a good one, no. So anyway, he said, well, we'll leave it for today because it's upsetting you a bit too much. Just leave it. Let me know in a week how you get on. And if necessary, we'll make another appointment. So I said, thank you. And I said, well, what do I owe? Do I pay the lady outside or pay you? He said, there is no charge. But that impressed me. The next morning I'm up and facilitated something. I suddenly had an overwhelming urge to go and have a pint and a pie, which I hadn't had for about 2 years. My mother looked at me, God bless her, she was still alive then, she was nursing me. She said, what's my real? I'm going out to have a drink and an eat. And I scoffed a steak and kidney pie and chips like I used to before I got ill. And a couple of pints of well, and I came home. I've never felt so well in my life. And from that day on, my appetite returned. I was sat up, I exercised more, I started walking. I was back within sort of about 8 months, I was back to work. Thanks you. In that year, I went from 10.5 stone, which I've been for the first year after having had the op. I was 8 stone 6 when I was ill. The year had gone by after the chapter session, I was at my usual 12 stone. I suddenly had the overwhelming urge to drive to Glastonbury. Now, I used to go to Glastonbury a fair bit when I was younger. I love Glastonbury tour. And I hadn't been up the tour for 15 years or more. And before I know it, I was bombing up the road and the Rainsford. Now, what on earth I thought I was going to do, I don't know. But I found myself at the bottom of Glastonbury tour, and there's a real little cafe built into the hill there. Or it used to be. I don't know if it's still there now. I haven't been there for so long. And a car park, and I parked the car up there. And I got out, and I was walking with crutches. I wasn't really in my right mind, to be honest with you. Who in their right mind would try and climb Glastonbury tour with crutches? But I don't know if you've been up it, but it's a sort of a gradual spiral stair. Got up, and I shot up there. In fact, I shot up so much I was carrying my crutches in my hand when I got up to the top. No time until I got to the top, and there's obviously the ruin of the church at the top. Wooden benches look out over the flats. And I chose one that looks right out for the northeast of the tour, right out over the flatlands. It's a beautiful view. And even on a rainy day, it was interesting. I was sat there in the rain. And as soon as I sat down, I started to feel better. I felt absolutely fabulous. I felt as if a weight was being lifted off me. Do you know, I nearly ran downhill. I felt fitter than I had done in years. I drove home. In fact, I stopped off at the cafe and had a cup of tea and a bite to eat. I went back, got in the car, drove home. Didn't even feel tired. Felt like I just driven around the block. I hadn't felt like that in 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. I got ill. And I said, Mum said, "You look better." I said, "I feel amazing." And I had a good night's sleep. Didn't wake up with any pain or discomfort. And from that day on, the healing process started. And I swear to goodness that it was the tour. The energy within the tour had done something.
Well, it sounds like it was a combination of the young man healer who started the process and then finished off at the tour.
And I don't know what made me do it. It suddenly came into my head, 8 o'clock in the morning, having just got up. And 1 minute I'm thinking about do I want toast or want marmalade. And next minute I'm going off to Glastonbury and put my coat on. My poor mum, I think she thought I totally flipped as well. That was just after the ops. That would be 1992/3, early 3. It was winter. It was far from summer. It's the worst time of year to think about climbing Glastonbury tour ever.
Let's just go to these images. I'm just going to.
Yeah, sure.
When these gold pictures arrived, is
Yeah.
that what they are?
That is the enhanced version, yeah. The gold, I must tell you, the gold is a mixture of reflected sunlight, or whatever it is, and I put a very mild gold filter on to bring out the detail in the image itself. So it's a combination of the two, because as you can see by the original, it's white. You see, the unique USP, as it were, of unique to me in 50-odd years of ufology and looking at the sky. I've never had shape-shifting objects that shift so fast in shape. You can point a camera, as I do, at the object. Now I set it for 5-frame auto take on the camera. You know, it does 5 shots, one after the other automatically. Auto shutter release. And the time it takes that camera to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's pretty quick. You can take a 5 on a tripod mount, locked off, so there's no question of movement, and it's resting on a solid wooden windowsill. So it's no wind, there's no movement at all. Yet every single shot of that actual shape will shift and change. When you blow up the image, it's changing shape, and sometimes it changes completely between one frame and the next. And I can't explain that. If it was a minute image change, you could say, well, perhaps it's turning or twisting, or its angles are changing on the actual shot itself. But this thing, it changes its complete shape of the craft, object, call it what you will. It doesn't happen every time, but I've had more often than not, these things will change complete shape from 1 second to the next. And it's extraordinary. I've never known a UFO do it that quick. I know they do shape change, not that quick. But, you can find Hisham power stations so attractive because all of these were taken, they are hovering near or over either the power station or a major junction from the power station to the national grid. They have a substation which is just about a mile from the power station itself, where the feed goes from the power station onto the national grid, and then the big national grid pylons out past that. They seem to be very fascinated with a nuclear power station. But the truth of the matter is that 9/10 of those are seen in that sort of area. I did my research in the local press, and apparently back in the 70s and 80s, long before I lived up here, these were known as the Hisham lights. And then they were, ever since that power station's been in existence, the late 60s, I think, that they have been seen there in the sky. So it is a reoccurring local phenomena that's recorded in local press at the time.
And where is Hisham again, Nigel, please?
Hisham is, roughly speaking, 2 miles from my location in South Morecambe on the Lancashire coast. Northwest
Okay.
coast.
Oh, right. Okay.
So
So
if you go
backwards now.
from Morecambe, just head slightly along the coast southwards, eastwards to be exact, you'll see Hisham, Heysham. It's also the main ferry port to Northern Ireland, North and South Ireland. It's one of the major ferries in the Isle of Man. They're constructing a 2 nuclear reactor power station. It's planning a 3rd. They're going to have one of the new cold nuclear reactor experimental ones built there, I think. So that's going to be quite an important thing, because you go on further down, you go to Blackpool, and then further again, you go to Liverpool. It's all down that sort of coastline. Hisham was, as I said to you about that chapel that was built there, one of the earliest Christian settlement and chapels built in England. And it has the Viking code stone-cut graves there, which very rare in England, not very many of them.
Here's a sneak preview of a sample of Nigel's original images, and then 1 or 2 of those same images put through an AI software program, and the outcome is fascinating.
Yeah.
That's one. Now, that one I've blown up before in the past. The one bottom right, that's another. Then we got one to the left, the meringue shaped one.
Yes,
No,
I
up one there. Up one, the middle again.
Yeah.
There, that's him. That's another one. And that one down the bottom is the one I just did this morning.
So there's 4 objects there, and this little white dot here.
Well, it's too far away for me to be able to.
Yeah, I just wondered if it was
It's
a star,
like,
a
there
star.
appear to be 2 lines to the left.
I know,
Vertical
these
line.
blue lines, very interesting.
I tried to enhance that, but the trouble is, as I say, I'm dealing with a small sensor.
Yeah,
And there's only so far you can magnify before you lose all that takes over, and you get no definition at all. If I had a large DSLR camera taking it, on a modern 22 thou sensor, you could probably put that at the poster size and get some good detail on it, but it's right at the very top right.
yeah.
Now that is to me a donut-shaped object. It is not pixelation. There's no way that is just pixelation of a light. You can see the contrast in the contours.
Yeah.
Same with the bottom right. That's some sort.
It's a very specific shape. It's very interesting, isn't it?
For a low camera resolution, a low camera pixel content in the sensor, it's good. The Samsung do a very good camera. For the phone, I've just changed up. I've got an S21 now, which has got even a better 5-lens camera on it. And the night shot on that, you can actually set them to do skyscapes. They are absolutely brilliant cameras now. I'm waiting for a nice clear night here now to get a few more of these. I've been taking them now I've got hundreds. I've got about between 400 and 500 shots I've taken that one area of the sky. Crazy.
All around Hisham.
Yeah, all around that Pacific area. There is something about it, and I don't know what, but I can only assume it's tied into the nuclear power station or the electric pylons and the electric substation. They seem to like that area. Beyond that, there's the BAE test airfields, the British Aircraft Establishment test fields. They've got about 4 or 5 airfields around that area as well. Factories are at Preston, I believe.
Okay. Isn't it interesting that you ended up living somewhere?
I'm literally right here. I'm 2 feet from the window that overlooks it. So I couldn't be in a better position really for sky watching if I tried. That one was daylight shot. That's 11 o'clock in the morning. And my sky again. That's heading northwest over the bay towards my home.
You said this is a Hisham one?
Yeah, that's Hisham. That's coming from Hisham Bay.
Wow.
More out towards sea than the power station. It's slightly out over the bay itself, coming in on the northwesterly direction.
And that was taken, what, 2000?
With my camera, taken with the Samsung again. I snapped that one laying here, and I suddenly saw it coming over. I thought, oh, that's interesting.
What did it look like to you when,
I thought at first it was an aircraft with BAE. I thought, oh, perhaps it's one of their Eurofighters or something coming over. Aircraft enthusiast as well. I thought, I'll take a snap. And when I looked at that, I thought, that's no aircraft. I don't know what it is, but it's not an aircraft. So I've enhanced it, and that's what I got.
Well, it looks like it's 2 craft there, doesn't it?
It's something very weird. I don't know what. Again, it's because of the sensor. I can't get it up any more than that. But I wish I could. I might rework it a bit with Lightroom and see if I can get a bit more enhancement on it. But it's a shame, really. I haven't got that crystal clearness with that, because I'd love to know what the heck's going on. I don't know what it looked like to begin with. I'm no Trekkie from the 60s. It looked like a Klingon warship out of Star Trek when I first saw it. Oh, there's a warbird. It's just an odd shape.
It's lovely to hear you giving the explanation rather than me typing something underneath.
That's what I always say. What do you make it? Because I love to hear other people's explanations, because between us, we might find the answer.
So this extraordinary image. Now, I know you said you'd enhanced it color-wise, so perhaps that's why we're seeing such an amazing.
No, the colors are only enhanced in the sense that when it comes to saturation, I increased the saturation a little, but I didn't overdo it. I didn't need to. It was that color when it came on the print.
Really?
I didn't really need to enhance it to any great degree. I just literally, when I put the shadow in to try and get some idea of depth on it and perspective, it dulled down the color a bit. So I just literally went about half a notch or a notch up on the saturation just to give it a bit of color emphasis. But the emphasis is not overplayed by any means. That's one thing I won't do.
Oh, well, that is very interesting. So
now I looked at the patination on it, and I think to myself, now could that be pixelation? Because it's got I'm looking at the lines, and it's got that angled square block
Oh,
effect.
as you said, looks very machined.
Yeah, and that's also that square blocking on the line there made me think for a moment pixelation, but then I look at the other end and it's got none of that. It's straight lines. If you look above, the lines are perfectly straight.
So which image is this then, Nigel? If we
This was just another one of an image that was there about 6 months ago, and I looked out the window, which I often do at 1, 2 in the morning. Now the sky can be overcast, but there's always this one light just in the sky, and the rest of the sky is overcast and cloudy. And
Okay, so I thought this was one of the 4, but
No.
it's not one of the 4. This is something different. Okay.
And if you look at the patternization on the lines, the bottom line, you would say, oh, it's got that zigzaggy effect. That's pixelation. Fair comment. But then if you look at the lines above, they're not. They are dead straight. They're in focus and they are a dead straight line. Now, if that was pixelated, that would have the same stratifying effect that has got on the bottom ones. And it has not. And if you look at the bottom and top image, the curves are perfectly smooth. There's no raggedation edge on that at all. So to me, that's genuine patternization on the surface, whatever it is. It's got a definite line between the red and the purple. There's a distinct sharp line there.
Well, yeah, I would say it's like a cerise pink and a orangey red to me, with that, again, a white flash coming out of it.
Yeah, and it's a perfectly straight dividing line between the two.
There is, it's true.
It's orange. Yes, the orange does blur with the yellow a little around the edge, but it's very definite dividing line at the top.
And there's further structure over here. I mean,
yeah, I know.
I mean,
It's
looks
curious.
absolutely humongous, and you don't know whether there's 2 objects or there's one.
I think it's one. Fancy it's one, and I think it's curved. Judging by that right-hand thing, it's curved towards us. And if that's the case, that one on the right, on the left, as we're looking at, I don't think so. The orange one, I think, is not so curved unless it's curved away from us. We're looking at a shortened image of it.
And this angle here, this is extraordinary, isn't it?
It is. It's just a very odd shape altogether. It shows symmetry some ways, and in other ways, it's totally anti-symmetric.
Yeah.
The left-hand side is the same, makes no sense whatsoever.
So this was taken Morecambe Way.
Over Heysham again. Yeah.
So where are we? We're in May, so maybe about November?
Yeah, about that. But Christmas time is usually a pretty good time for me because the sky's that much clearer. But this particular night was overcast, as it often is, sadly, in the winter over here. And this light always seems to be on its own. And it always seems to be in that general area. I can usually look out the window and say, Sue will tell you, I wake up saying, I got my friends here again. And I'll pick up and just slip my camera into the mount, open up the window so I don't get any distortion from window panes. I'll stick it out the open window, freeze to death, and take a couple of 3 shots of it. And then I just sit back in bed with the window shut again and whip out my Photoshop and see what I get. And it's like fishing, you know, sometimes I get nothing, and all of a sudden I'll get this. And it fascinates me, and it puzzles me.
Maybe we'll have a look at that one, you know. If you want to have a cup of tea, and let's say I'll see you back in about 5 minutes.
Sue said to me, do you know what time you were last night?
Join us in episode 3 as we take a look through a catalogue of Nigel's extraordinary images, which he has applied the Remedy AI software to.